He's a good buddy of mine. He came out here from St. Louis. He's actually peer support. He's working, he moved out here actually to Youngstown. He's helping out with the men's sober house out here in Youngstown. But he's a great guy. He's going to be filling in for Maurice today, and it's not a loss, I'll tell you that. Courtney brings the fire. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce a good friend of mine, Courtney Collier.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming out. I want to show some appreciation and gratitude and some humility for such a good cause as this. You know, I've been a beneficiary of the ARCHway Institute, and now being able to work with them hand in hand, it does my heart pleasure. And it's a really great organization, and I show appreciation to you all for coming out and supporting this event. So let's give them another hand. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about my story, and then more importantly, talk about the benefits of the ARCHway Institute and how they can help in recovery and how much is needed for your support. So I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, in unincorporated Castle Point. Of course, that doesn't mean much to you all, but from St. Louis, if you hear you from Castle Point, they look at you and say, "What?" It's a pretty, unique area, I would say. So, I grew up with both parents, an older brother, two younger sisters. Went to church and, made good grades in school. So, it's a typical childhood. I didn't have drinking and drugs and things in my house. Of course, it was in the neighborhood, but I really didn't, participate in a lot of those things. My parents did a really great job of occupying us and raising us with morals and with values. And I would say somewhere along the line, just inherently, I started to accumulate some thinking that allowed me to be able to detach and not be so, even though I was an extroverted person, I was introverted with my thinking, with my feelings, with my emotions. I was a bedwetter. And I didn't know any other people that wet the bed, so something like that to me made me feel isolated because I felt like I was the only one in the world, and the embarrassment of having that to happen was something that I just kept to myself. I didn't understand why. I didn't understand the reasons why this was happening to me as a kid. But eventually, thank God I outgrew that. So they say. But, it was things like having a temper, and because I didn't deal well and cope well with my feelings and emotions. I had an incident one time. I would get into fights, and kind of my neighborhood, you had to fight because it was just part of the culture. And but some of the things that I got involved with when it came to processing feelings and emotions, I didn't do well with expressing those. So I would hold a lot of that inside, internalize it. And so when something would tick me off, I would flare up. And it would be so outrageous of a response that it didn't seem appropriate for the situation because it wasn't clicking in my mind that I do have to process things and I do have to, get feelings and emotions out and not bottle them up inside. So I had one particular incident where I got mad at my brother. I don't even know why, but I chased him down the street throwing steak knives at him. This is my only blood brother I know, right? But, thank goodness, I didn't have grade A. And he had pretty much a head start. What's up, buddy? This is my partner here. I told him to come and get me if I started doing that. I guess that's the signal. So, you know, there were situations like that I got into, again, where I wasn't processing my feelings and emotions, and I was showing them in a very poor manner. My first drink that I took was from my uncle, and I was probably a teenager, maybe not even a teenager, but I drank some beer, and it was the most disgusting thing I ever tasted. I was like, why would anybody want to drink this? That was the first time I just had an experience with alcohol. But my first drunk was in high school, and I went to a high school party at a hotel, and they were doing a game called chugging. So that's where they take the funnel, and then they have a nice long hose, and then they take a 40 ounce and they pour it down the hose and see if you can chug. And everybody says, chug, 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 chug. So I did. And I remember everybody rooting me on and everybody cheering me. And I remember the feeling that I felt like I fit in. I belong. You know what I'm saying? It was just this time where I felt like it's it. And so that was my first experience with drinking. From that point on, I wasn't a heavy drinker, but I would just drink occasionally every now and then. Eventually, as I continued to not recognize my inability to properly deal with emotions and feelings, and to be able to cope well with different things, alcohol became my friend. Alcohol became my companion. Alcohol became my go-to. When I was happy, I drank. When I was sad, I drank. When I was mad, I drank. Any day that ended in Y, I started drinking. And so eventually it culminated until I got to the point to where I got a DWI. I had a really great job. I was making $70,000 plus a year, and I was traveling all over the country, you know, an expense account, getting $700 a month to eat. But it was the most unhappy time that I ever knew in my life. And that's when I really learned the lesson that money does not buy happiness. And money does not mean everything. You know, money is necessary, but it's not necessary for happiness. And so I ended up getting a DWI while I was out on an assignment in Colorado. And I remember thinking to myself, man, alcohol just isn't working out too well for me. So maybe I ought to switch to something else. So I started smoking marijuana. It was a lot safer for me personally. So I started smoking marijuana, and again, it became my go-to. It became my friend. It became my everything. Constantly, day in and day out. I couldn't wait to get off of work to go smoke. I would smoke before work. You know, I would want to take a break and then go and smoke some of the blunt roaches in the car just to get me through the day. So I wasn't separating myself from the addiction. I just changed what I was addicted to. Well, eventually that continued to culminate until I started smoking some other things. Now, I don't think my story is so different, but one of the things for me that was original, I would say, was that when I started going into treatment, I didn't go into treatment because I thought I needed help. And I didn't go into treatment because I thought my life was so bad. And I didn't go into treatment because I thought I was an addict. So of course you're thinking, well, why did you go into treatment? Well, I went into treatment because I was mad at my employer. I was mad at my employer because my manager called me out for nodding off in his meeting after a couple of days of partying. So, you know, I went into HR, I raised a big fuss. You know, I'm the only black guy on the team. You know, why is he picking on me? You know, other people sleep. So they said, well, what do you want to do, Mr. Collier? I said, well, I knew we had short-term disability. And a lot of people would go out on leave for needed reasons. Now, I didn't personally think that I needed it, but I wanted it. So I said, I want to go on medical leave. They said, okay, well, here's the paperwork. Go ahead and do what you need to do. And when you're done, come on back and, you know, we'll be happy to have you. I said, yes, I won. I won. So I sat at home for a couple of weeks partying, you know. Of course, I picked up drinking a little bit again, just a little bit. And smoking marijuana. And then Of course, I said, well, I gotta have a medical reason to be off work. So I guess what I'll do is I'll check into detox and treatment, and I'll just go through the motions so I can get my certificate from the doctor that says I was here. And that way I can get paid and stay at home and continue to party. That was my ultimate plan. That was my ultimate goal. So I checked into ARCHway in St. Louis, and there was John Stuckey sitting there. I think he was teaching the class, I don't really know. But I was sitting there looking just broken, disgusted, but I didn't connect with anybody there in treatment. I said, well, I'm in here with these people. Yeah, these people have some problems in their life. I don't have problems in my life, even though I had a DWI, even though I couldn't stay functional at work, even though I couldn't produce what I needed to. In my mind, it wasn't registering. So I checked into treatment, and that is when I started realizing that I did have a problem. Week after week, I sat in there not listening, not connecting, not thinking, not understanding what was going on. And eventually when I said, well, I don't want to get kicked out, so let me go ahead and start giving them the negative drug screenings that they need in order for me to go ahead and graduate. And then I tried, and I couldn't. And then I really tried, and I didn't. And then I really, really gave it all my might, and then I found out that I can't. And that's when it really hit me. You know, what a really, really horrible feeling it is when you realize that your life is really out of control. It's a place that exists, and it's a time, I think, in everyone in recovery, they can remember that moment where they really have to accept that I have a problem. It's just a moment of clarity that comes to you, and you say, wow, I have no idea how I got here. I have no idea where I'm at. And then the worst part about it is that I have no idea how to get away from this. It's such a sad feeling. And I think probably most everybody probably at that point cries, because I know I did. I sat in my apartment and I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But you know what? The good thing about that is the gift of desperation. The gift of desperation is really something. So at that point, I said, I'll tell you what, now I'm really trying to do this, and I know I don't have it, but my mama didn't raise no dummy. So I came into class the next day with some class. And I started listening, and I started learning, I started churning the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions. I started getting it. So I got to the point to where I can get 1 day, and then 2 days, and then 3, and then 4. And then I put together a whole week. And then I said, well, I don't even know how I'm going to get to 30 days, but I kept doing it. I kept trying. Now, it's times like this where ARCHway Institute and people that support the institution really come into play, because a lot of times the bridge of the gap in connection with treatment and services and housing becomes very important. Now, I remember one day I was sitting in class, and a group of people that I was in class with, one of them sitting right over here, Mr. Courtney Baker, he said, well, we're going over to the sober recovery house. And I said, you're not going without me. I said, oh, you taking me? I invited myself. I sure did. I said, if you're going to check it out, I'm going to check it out. Because you're not going to get anything that I'm not going to have. I wanted it. So I showed up at the house, and I remember walking in the door, and I looked, and I said, wow, this is a mansion. I said, these addicts living like this? I said, oh, where's my room at? Give me a room out here. Now, at that time, I had an apartment, and I had 3 months left on my lease. But I was so desperate, I was so wanting this so badly, that I said, nothing is going to stop me. So at that point, I not only had my lease for my apartment, but I went ahead and moved into sober living. Now, I don't know how I was going to do it. I mean, you can't hardly pay one place with rent, rather pay two, but guess what? I did. And that's where people like the Stuckies and Archway Institute come into place, because they help people who need that. My moving into sober living was a pivotal point in my life. Sober living for me personally changed the environment that I was in. It allowed me to be around other sober support people that could help not only understand, but they also made sure that they held you accountable. I remember when I was in sober living and I had a relapse. And I remember I was scared to death, thinking I was going to get kicked out. And I went to our house managers and I just told them the truth. I said, listen, I messed up. I said, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how you guys are going to deal with this, but I messed up and here's the situation. And I remember them sitting down with me and expressing, reviewing the tape and how did this happen and what went wrong and learning from the situation. And they actually use that as an example to the others to say, you know what, honesty is the best policy. And from that point, that also was a stepping stone for me. From that point, I went on to managing chores in the house. Then I went on to be an assistant house manager, moved to be a house manager, and now I'm here in Ohio doing that same thing, doing that same venture with those things that I learned. So again, I can't express enough the importance of your support. When people are in recovery, they're at a point in their life where they can't support themselves. And we need people to hold them up when they can't hold themselves up. We need people to care about them when they don't know how to care for themselves. We need people to help them, to encourage them, to push them, to root them on. We need people that are strong. We need people that are good examples. We need people that understand. It's very important and it's very critical. You all really, I don't know if you can understand the impact that you have on people's lives. We have so many people that come into sober living, they don't have jobs. Some of them are coming from the streets. And the sober living environment is the only last step that they have. They've burned all those bridges. And so this type of support is necessary. The institutions like Archway Institute, it is such a profound institution and it's such a profound impact in society that without your support, without your help, they're not able to do it. Without your support and your money and your donations, without you being here and encouraging the people that are doing it, letting them know that they're not alone, letting people in recovery understand that they don't have to be by themselves, even though they may feel isolated, even though they may feel like nobody cares. Sometimes that is the difference that it makes. It takes that one moment in time to change a person's life. And everything that you guys are doing here today is doing that. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate it. Everyone who's been a participant and a recipient of the institution appreciates it. We thank you very much. We thank you for being here. And I thank you for your time.